Welcome to an hour of strange underwater discoveries you've never heard of. Tonight, we'll cast aside the familiar shores and descend into the planet's most hidden depths, sunken worlds and bizarre phenomena lurking beneath the waves that even experienced explorers seldom glimpse. Over the next 60 minutes, you'll journey into submerged forests petrified by ancient sea level shifts, step into caverns glowing with bioluminescent life, and drift alongside ghostly ruins of civilizations lost to time. Each tale you'll hear is grounded in real exploration and enigmatic evidence, yet remains unresolved, defying the explanations of scientists and adventurers alike. Imagine the hush of ancient shipwrecks, their timbers encrusted with coral and mystery. Picture colossal saline rivers tumbling through flooded caves. Feel the chill of brinicles, underwater icicles, that freeze everything in their path. Allow these uncanny visions to wash over you as the ebb and flow of gentle narration lulls your mind and body towards sleep. There are no quick fixes or neat endings here, only the invitation to wander at the ocean's vast, unfathomed realm. Off the coast of Yonaguni Island, Japoma, Japan, lies one of the ocean's most tantalizing enigmas, a colossal rock formation that, at a glance, resembles a vast, submerged step pyramid. First glimpsed by local fishermen and officially brought to the world's attention in 1986 by diver Kihachiro Aratake, this extraordinary structure sits some 80 feet below the surface of the East China Sea, its flat terraces and sharp right-angled edges defying the gentle curves we expect from natural seabed features. At first, the formation seems impossibly precise, long, linear ledges descending like giant steps, wide benches that could easily serve as amphitheatre seating, if only time and tide had not claimed them. From certain angles, you can almost imagine ramps connecting tiers, passageways leading to hidden chambers carved into the living rock. Yet there are no artifacts, no inscriptions, no shards of pottery to give away the identity of the hands that might have shaped it. The entire site is remarkably clean, unbroken by the scattered debris one would expect at the ruins of an ancient temple or palace. Geologists have stepped forward with patient, rational explanations. Massive tectonic forces over many millennia, lifting and tilting sedimentary rock layers, repeated cycles of erosion smoothing certain faces while leaving other surfaces sharply defined, natural jointing patterns that happen to line up in straight angular grids. Under this view, Yonaguni's steps are an extraordinary coincidence, the product of nature's random artistry rather than human blueprints. Yet these arguments leave many unanswered questions hanging in the cool, salty water. Why do some terraces run at exactly 90 degrees to one another? Why are right angles so consistently sharp, so geometric in an undersea landscape where currents, silt and shifting sands usually wear away corners? And why, if this was simply a natural mesa, does it appear so perfectly suited to human proportions? Benches built at the height of a seated person, corridors exactly wide enough for human passage. Those who believe in an ancient civilization point to the broader context of the region. The end of the last ice age, around 10,000 years ago, saw sea levels rise dramatically as glaciers melted. At that time, hunter-gatherer communities existed around what are now submerged coastlines across Asia. It is plausible that a prehistoric culture thrived on what is today the Yonaguni Plateau, building ceremonial structures, walkways and platforms. As the oceans encroached, they may have hastily abandoned their edifices, leaving them intact but gradually submerged as the meltwater crept higher year by year. Diving expeditions over the decades have brought back tantalizing but inconclusive hints. What looked like carved grooves that might have channeled water, boulder-like stones perched on flat surfaces as if placed deliberately, and vertical pillars that resemble man-made columns more than random outcroppings. Some divers swear they have found additional shapes, a half-buried bridge spanned across two ledges, a cluster of boulders that coalesce into what looks like the remains of a long-forgotten staircase. But every time someone tries to excavate or chip away, the rock reveals itself to be the same geological composition as the surrounding bedrock. No tool marks have been scientifically confirmed, and attempts to find pottery shards or organic remains in the crevices have come up empty-handed. Currents swirl through crevices too narrow for human entry, meaning the insides of the structure remain largely unexplored. Yet whatever lies within remains undisturbed sand and stone. Local legend adds an eerie echo to the scientific debate. Fishermen in the region speak in hushed tones about sailors who vanish near the site, boats inexplicably losing GPS calibration or radio contact when they pass overhead. Some claim they have heard ethereal music like low drums or chanting carried up from the depths on calm nights. Others tell of a strange sense of vertigo, as if the pyramid's geometry was somehow warping their perception of up and down. In 1997, a team funded by Japan's National Institute of Advanced Industrial Science and Technology conducted high-resolution sonar mapping and determined that multiple terraces and an adjacent formation they dubbed the Carp Pond existed at varying depths, suggesting a more extensive complex than initially thought. But funding ran out before any comprehensive archaeological dive could take place, and today the site remains largely the province of freelance explorers and enthusiastic amateurs, armed with cameras and tri-weekly tide charts. The debate continues heatedly in journals and online forums. On one side, staunch skeptics label it Yonaguni's folly, a geological marvel blown out of proportion by wishful thinking. On the other, passionate enthusiasts assert that humanity's story must account for a culture skilled enough to sculpt stone beneath open skies. A culture erased by rising seas before the dawn of written language. Both sides agree on one point. The Yonaguni Pyramid resists easy explanation, and perhaps that is why it continues to captivate us. In an age when almost every corner of the globe has been mapped from space, when every archaeological site on dry land has been catalogued and carbon dated, here is a place underwater where human and natural histories intertwine, where we still feel the uncanny pull of the unknown. No one has definitively proven that people carved these terraces, nor has anyone convincingly shown they formed purely through the whim of geology. As you imagine descending through the sapphire blue, the water closing in around you, consider the countless mysteries the ocean still holds. Shipwrecks buried beneath silt, creatures adapted to total darkness, and entire landscapes lost to prehistoric sea level shifts. The Yonaguni Pyramid stands as a monument to those enigmas, an invitation both to scientific inquiry and to the imagination. Whether natural or man-made, this sunken wonder reminds us that for all our modern technology, the ocean keeps its deepest secrets hidden until we find the courage to dive into its silent depths. Imagine walking along a windswept Scottish shoreline at dusk. The tide has receded farther than usual, revealing a strange, otherworldly sight. Dozens of bleached tree stumps protruding from the wet sand and shallow surf, their gnarled roots twisting into the breaking waves. These are not the remains of shipwrecks or coastal erosion. They are the petrified trunks of an ancient pine forest, drowned by rising seas some 8,000 years ago. Welcome to the submerged forest of Scotland, where history and prehistory lie exposed between land and sea, and where each stump seems to beckon you to remember the lives and stories it once sheltered. At the end of the last ice age, Scotland's coastline looked very different. Melting glaciers released immense volumes of water, causing sea levels to rise globally and flooding vast tracts of low-lying land. Around 6000 BCE, what is now the shallow North Sea began its slow incursion over coastal plains that had for millennia supported a thriving ecosystem of pine, birch, and hazel forests. Freshwater streams carved winding channels through peat bogs alive with wildfowl, deer, wild boar, and even the now extinct aurochs roamed under the canopy, and small bands of Mesolithic hunter-gatherers established temporary camps to harvest wood, forage berries, and fish the fertile streams. As the ocean advanced, these forests were drowned, first at their fringes, then deeper and deeper into the land. Layers of sand and silt settled over the decaying trunks, preserving them in an oxygen-poor environment that slowed decomposition. Over millennia, minerals in the groundwater turned the wood to stone, creating the petrified stumps we see today. The first modern reports of the submerged forest date back to the 19th century, when unusually low tides exposed dark stumps on Sutherland's beaches. But it was only in recent decades, thanks to systematic surveys and low-tide photography, that the full extent of this prehistoric woodland has been appreciated. Today, at sites such as Camster, Helmsdale and Embo, the stumps appear only briefly, during spring low tides or after powerful storms that scour away overlying sand. For a few fleeting hours, the forest awakens. Divers can don wetsuits and fins, swimming among the stumps as if through a ghostly petrified grove. Others walk through knee-deep surf, placing hands on rings of concentric growth preserved in stone. Diving instructors report a profound sense of unease. The silence is almost oppressive, broken only by the rush of tide around gnarled root masses. One veteran diver likened it to entering a cathedral where the congregation has vanished, leaving only the pillars behind. What makes the submerged forest even more fascinating is evidence of Mesolithic human presence. Archaeologists have recovered flint tools, worked bone fragments, and charcoal deposits from within the peat layers around the stumps, clear signs that people once camped here. Radiocarbon dating places charcoal and tool assemblages at around 6200 BCE, precisely when sea levels were overtopping the forest floor. One particularly evocative find was a perfectly shaped flint microlith, a small barbed arrowhead embedded in the base of a stump. It seemed as though the hunter who fired it missed his mark, and the arrow remained lodged in the living tree for centuries before surf and sand revealed it to modern eyes. Imagine the shock of realizing that an artifact of daily survival lay hidden beneath the sea, waiting 8 millennia to reappear. Local folklore has blossomed around the submerged forest, weaving legend into the landscape. Stories passed down through generations speak of Blackmarsh, a vanished village said to lie beneath the waves, its inhabitants punished for arrogance or greed. On moonlit nights, some say, you can hear the tolling of phantom church bells and the cries of lost children echoing from the surf. Others claim that reflections of dancing lights play across the water, where once a stray lantern sent children running home, only to be swallowed by the surge. These tales, though almost certainly poetic embellishments, speak to an ancient human need to ground dramatic environmental change in moral and supernatural terms. The drowned forest becomes more than geology. It becomes a cautionary symbol of nature's power and a repository of collective memory. Beyond its historical resonance, the submerged forest serves as a unique ecological time capsule. Marine biologists have documented communities of barnacles, sea squirts, and small fish colonizing stump surfaces, turning each trunk into a microhabitat. The forest lies within areas of special scientific interest, and divers must obtain permits to protect both archaeological and marine life. Sedimentologists use underwater coring to study peat layers above and below the stump horizon, reconstructing ancient climates and pollen records. These data help scientists understand how rapid sea level rise affected human migration and coastal ecosystems, an issue with direct relevance today as our modern coastlines face accelerating climate change. The submerged forest of Scotland is more than a stunning curiosity. It is a vivid reminder that coastlines are not static. Entire forests can vanish beneath advancing seas within centuries, a geological blink of an eye. For Mesolithic communities, the rising water would have been a slow but inexorable threat, reshaping landscapes and forcing migrations. Today's coastal populations face similar challenges, albeit driven by anthropogenic warming rather than melting ice. By studying how ancient forests were drowned and how people adapted or failed to adapt, we gain perspective on our own vulnerability. The stumps of Sutherland whisper that the seas will not wait, that every generation must reckon with a shifting horizon. Next time you stroll along a Scottish beach and the tide dips low enough, look for those dark stumps rising like ghostly sentinels. Run your fingers along their rings frozen in stone, and consider the centuries of human footsteps that once circled their trunks. Listen to the hush of waves threading through millennia-old roots. These petrified pines have witnessed the end of an ice age, the ebb and flow of human settlement, and the inexorable rise of the ocean. Standing among them is an invitation to remember the fragile boundary between land and sea, to imagine the lives that once thrived here, and to dream of the secrets still buried just beneath the current. In the quiet company of ancient wood and cold surf, you feel time's vast sweep and the ocean's gentle power. And as you drift back toward the shore, carrying the memory of those drowned trees, let their silent testimony guide you into sleep, reminding you that beneath every wave lies a story waiting to be told. Beneath the towering ice walls of Greenland's remote fjords, an eerie phenomenon has begun to capture the attention of scientists and adventurous divers alike. Shimmering columns of methane bubbles rising from cracks in the seabed. At first glance, these ghostly pillars look like underwater geysers or fleeting shafts of starlight, but they are in fact potent reminders of our changing planet. Trapped beneath millennia-old permafrost, vast reserves of methane are now seeping out as the Arctic warms. Each bubble column is a live demonstration of how the frozen north is beginning to breathe again, and the implications are as mesmerizing as they are unsettling. Greenland's permafrost formed during the last ice age, cementing vast amounts of organic matter, dead plants, microbes and sediments into locked layers of soil and clay. Over thousands of years, heat and pressure transformed these deposits into a frozen vault of carbon. Beneath that, deep in the seabed sludge, methane hydrates crystallized into ice-like lattices. Locked behind caps of permafrost and glacial weight, these hydrates remained stable, until now. As summer temperatures in the Arctic rise at twice the global average, the permafrost's upper layers thaw, opening fissures through which methane gas can escape, seeping into seawater and ultimately the atmosphere. Only a handful of research teams have ventured into these icy fjords, braving sub-zero air temperatures and water barely above freezing. Armed with underwater cameras and gas detection sensors, divers descend to the seabed, often at depths of 50 to 100 meters, where they encounter bubbling chimneys as tall as 15 feet. The columns form when methane gas, under high pressure, forces its way up through weakened sediment, coalescing into continuous streams of bubbles. Sunlight filtering through crevasses above illuminates the rising columns like fiber optic cables, casting an otherworldly glow in the dark, frigid waters. The sight is simultaneously beautiful and foreboding. In clear water, each bubble sparkles, reflecting rays from the surface. But that sparkle belies methane's explosiveness. Mixed with oxygen, the gas can ignite with a spark, creating an underwater flash fire. Researchers carefully avoid bringing any electrical equipment too close for fear of an accidental ignition. One Norwegian scientist compares it to watching 1,000 tiny flares rising from the seabed, knowing that the slightest heat source could turn them into a raging inferno. Methane is a greenhouse gas more than 25 times as potent as carbon dioxide over a 100-year period. While individual seeps may release only a few cubic meters of gas per hour, the cumulative effect from dozens or hundreds of uncharted vents could be significant. Scientists estimate that Arctic permafrost holds at least 1/500 gigatons of carbon, much of it in the form of methane hydrates. As the seeing continues, each bubble contributes to atmospheric warming, which in turn thaws more permafrost, a self-reinforcing feedback loop that could accelerate climate change in unpredictable ways. Most known methane seeps in Greenland lie within a handful of fjords aggressively monitored by research vessels. But satellite imagery and sonar surveys hint at countless more bubbling zones shrouded under sea ice or hidden by coastal cliffs. Some methane halo signatures have been detected from orbit, but mapping their exact locations requires risky in-water verification. Divers report vent fields spread across tens of square kilometers, but the true extent remains uncharted. Each new discovery raises urgent questions. How many gigatons of methane are locked here? How quickly are these reservoirs destabilizing? And can we even model the impact on global weather patterns? Methane seeps also reshape local marine ecosystems. Chemosynthetic bacteria colonize the vent emissions, in turn supporting unique clams, worms and tube worms, species not found anywhere else. These microbial mats carpet the seabed around seeps, creating tiny oases of life in otherwise barren depths. Yet the rapid increase in methane flux could overwhelm these fragile communities. Oxygen depletion and ocean acidification, both side effects of methane oxidation, threaten to suffocate traditional Arctic species, from cold water corals to plankton, disrupting food chains that sustain fish, seabirds and marine mammals. The methane bubbles of Greenland's fjords are more than a natural spectacle. They are a clarion call echoing the urgency of climate action. Every visible plume is evidence that Earth's northern reaches are no longer the stable frozen expanse of the past. As explorers continue mapping and measuring, their findings feed into global climate models, refining predictions and guiding policy decisions. Some researchers advocate drilling out small vents and capping them, akin to methane management in conventional natural gas fields, to slow emissions. Others argue for drastic carbon reduction to curb further warming. Whatever the approach, the stakes could not be higher. The Arctic's hidden firefalls may hold the tipping point between manageable change and runaway catastrophe. Beneath the frozen expanse of polar seas, where sunlight struggles to penetrate thick sheets of drifting ice, an eerily beautiful yet lethal phenomenon forms in secret: brinicles or underwater icicles. First captured on film off Antarctica's coast in 2011, these inverted ice stalactites descend like ghostly fingers, freezing anything they touch. Over the next 6 minutes, we'll explore how brinicles come to life, the chilling mechanics that fuel their growth and their deadly impact on unsuspecting sea creatures beneath the polar night. Picture a calm sea, its surface cloaked in several feet of porous sea ice, riddled with brine channels. As seawater freezes into pure ice, it expels concentrated, super cold saltwater known as brine. Trapped within the ice matrix, this dense brine finds narrow pathways, tiny tunnels formed by the squeezing action of freezing crystals. When a brine channel finally opens at the ice's underside, the salty solution, often well below 20 degrees, gushes downward under gravity's pull. As the hypersaline brine cascades into the frigid seawater below, around 1.8 degrees, it chills the surrounding water instantly. That sudden drop in temperature causes a sheath of ice to form around the descending brine stream, creating an icy tube that grows downward, a brinacle. The process is slow, adding a few centimeters of length each minute. Over the course of an hour, a brinacle can extend several meters, curling toward the seabed like a frozen tentacle. On the ocean floor, hidden beneath the ice, an unsuspecting sea urchin drifts along the silty substrate. Suddenly it's blocked by an expanding ring of ice, its spines encased in frost. Before it can wiggle free, the brinicle's tip touches the sand and melts into a radial crust, sealing off any escape. In minutes, the urchin, along with starfish, worms and brittle sea cucumbers, becomes encased in a lethal column of ice, embalmed in a frozen tomb. The only signs left behind are crystalline patterns etched into their bodies, visible when divers later inspect the wreckage. Brinicles are rare outside polar regions because they require a delicate balance of freezing surface temperatures, saline rejection, and calm water conditions. Too much turbulence, and the brine disperses before an ice sheath can form. Too little temperature difference, and the brine won't be cold enough to freeze its surroundings. During the Antarctic winter, with extended periods of darkness and minimal wind, these conditions align perfectly. Only then does the ocean's cruelty manifest as these lethal ice fingers. Beyond their macabre beauty, brinicles play a role in polar oceanography. The sinking brine drains heat from surface ice layers, influencing seawater circulation and, in turn, driving the global thermohaline conveyor belt. By studying brinicles, researchers better understand how polar ice formation impacts nutrient mixing, carbon sequestration, and even the distribution of sea life in frigid habitats. Time-lapse footage of brinicles forming reveals a slow-motion ballet of crystal growth, brine bursts, and entrapped sea creatures. Each brinicle is unique, some slender and delicate, others thick and jagged. Divers describe the haunting sight of these columns dangling from a frozen ceiling lit only by their headlamps, as if nature has sculpted frozen fingers reaching down to grasp the seabed. While brinicles claim the title of underwater icicles, the ocean crafts other lethal constructs far from sunlight's warmth. Submarine brine pools in Arctic fjords, methane seeps that bubble under permafrost, and hydrothermal vents that spew superheated fluids all create localized death zones and foster exotic ecosystems. Each phenomenon reminds us that the ocean's depths are a frontier of extremes, beauty intertwined with brutality. As we leave the realm of brinicles and drift onward, consider the chilling complexity of these icy sculptures. In the silent dark waters beneath polar ice, the ocean continues to invent new ways to trap, transform and preserve life, often in forms we could scarcely imagine. What other lethal constructs lie waiting hidden beneath the waves, poised to amaze and terrify those who dare to explore? Thank you for joining this chilling descent. Let the hush of frozen waters carry you deeper into dreams. Descend with me now 1/2 mile beneath the ocean's surface, into a realm where sunlight never penetrates and pressures would crush an unprepared vessel. Here, along the seams where Earth's tectonic plates pull apart, lie hydrothermal vents, fissures in the crust that belch scalding, mineral-rich water into the frigid abyss. Over millennia, the dissolved metals in these vent fluids precipitate upon contact with near-freezing seawater, gradually constructing towering chimneys known as black smokers. In this 6.5-minute journey, we'll explore how these chimneys form, the extraordinary life they harbour, and the tantalising possibility that they may have been the cradle of life on our planet. Imagine a submerged fissure in the rocky ocean floor, dark and silent except for the hiss of superheated water escaping from great depths. Seawater, drawn down through cracks in the crust, is superheated by underlying magma chambers to temperatures exceeding 350 degrees. In this extreme heat, seawater becomes a powerful solvent, leaching iron, copper, zinc, sulfur, and other minerals from the surrounding basalt. The fluid, now under immense pressure, races back up through vent orifices. When it meets the ambient seawater, typically hovering around 2 degrees Celsius, the dissolved minerals instantly crystallize. Layer by layer, they build the chimney's walls, forming black smoker structures that can reach heights of 20 meters or more. The plume of vent fluid resembles a chimney's smoke, thick with fine mineral particles, hence the evocative name. The growth of a black smoker is a slow, patient process. Each expelled pulse of metal-laden water deposits a thin film of sulfide minerals, pyrite, chalcopyrite, and sphalerite, around the vent opening. Over years and centuries, these films solidify into massive rocky edifices. Some chimneys develop broad flanges or tables near their tops, sculpted by shifts in fluid flow or sudden bursts of activity. Others grow slender and pointed, like Gothic spires reaching toward the seabed above. The interior channels remain hot and active, while the exterior cools and hardens into a protective shell. It is geology in fast forward, a fusion of fire and water creating new rock beneath the sea. To us, these vents seem inhospitable, plumes of superheated fluid surrounded by crushing pressure and total darkness. Yet around the base of each black smoker thrives a teeming oasis of life. Giant tube worms, Riftia pachyptila, their vivid red plumes unfurled like cephalopod tentacles, clustered densely on the mineral substratum. These worms lack mouths or stomachs. Instead, they house chemosynthetic bacteria in an internal organ called the trophosome. The bacteria extract energy by oxidizing hydrogen sulfide from the vent fluid, producing organic compounds that nourish their hosts. Nearby recline clusters of giant clams, their shells adorned with patterns of orange and white. Blind shrimp skitter across the chimney flanges, antennae waving to detect chemical cues. Even mobile crabs and fish venture near, harvesting microbial mats or preying on smaller vent inhabitants. This ecosystem, built not on sunlight and photosynthesis, but on chemistry and heat, upends our textbook definitions of habitable environments. Life here harnesses Earth's inner heat, forging an independent biosphere in the planet's darkest corners. Since their surprise discovery in 1977, when the research vessel Nor first sampled vent fluids on the Galapagos Rift, thousands of hydrothermal vents and their chimneys have been identified along mid-ocean ridges worldwide. Yet a vast majority of the ocean floor remains unexplored. Advances in remotely operated vehicles, ROVs, and autonomous underwater vehicles, AUVs, have mapped some vent fields, but countless others await discovery in the abyssal darkness. Each site may harbour unique species, worms, bacteria, and crustaceans found nowhere else on Earth. Scientists routinely announce new taxa, microscopic archaea metabolizing exotic chemicals, crustaceans that tunnel into chimney walls, limpets grazing on bacterial films, and giant clams with symbiotic adaptations rivaling Darwin's wildest imaginings. The genetic and biochemical novelty locked in these creatures holds promise for biotechnology, enzymes that operate at extreme temperatures, metabolites with antibiotic potential, and insights into resilience that could inform astrobiology. One of the most profound implications of black smoker research lies in the origins of life itself. If life arose in the absence of sunlight, where chemistry alone powered metabolism, then it might have begun around vents similar to those we see today. Laboratory experiments have replicated vent conditions, yielding amino acids and simple organic molecules. Proponents of the hydrothermal vent hypothesis suggest that mineral-laden chimneys could have provided catalytic surfaces, compartmentalization, and temperature gradients necessary for early metabolic pathways. In this view, Earth's first cells may have clustered around naturally forming proton gradients in vent rocks, far removed from sunlit shorelines or volcanic hot springs. Black smokers not only host life, but also influence global chemical cycles. The vent fluids transfer heat and chemicals from Earth's interior into the oceans, driving circulation patterns and affecting nutrient distribution. Research into vent chemistry helps refine models of carbon sequestration and deep ocean ecology, essential as climate change alters thermal structures and oxygen levels. However, vent ecosystems face threats from emerging deep-sea mining interests. The same minerals that build chimneys, copper, zinc, and precious metals are now targeted for commercial extraction. Disturbance of vent sites could destroy unique habitats before they are even documented. Scientists and policymakers debate protections under international law, recognizing that vent fields, like coral reefs, are hotspots of biodiversity requiring careful stewardship. In the cold silence of the deep ocean, black smoker chimneys stand as monuments to Earth's geological vigour and the tenacity of life. They challenge our notions of habitable worlds, suggesting that life can thrive in the most extreme conditions, and perhaps even beyond our planet, on worlds with icy crusts and subsurface oceans. As you drift towards slumber, picture those towering chimneys casting pillars of mineral smoke into the abyss, tubeworm forests waving in the current, and alien creatures clinging to the walls of an undersea cathedral lit only by Earth's inner fire. Imagine drilling through nearly 4 kilometers of the East Antarctic ice sheet, one of the planet's most hostile environments, to reach a hidden world sealed away for 15 million years. In 2012, Russian scientists accomplished this feat at the Vostok Station borehole, tapping into Lake Vostok, an immense subglacial freshwater lake roughly the size of Lake Ontario, but buried beneath the ice since before Antarctica froze over. In that moment, they punctured a time capsule of the extraordinary scientific potential, a dark, high-pressure ecosystem that has evolved in isolation, untouched by sunlight or atmospheric exchange. Over the next 6 minutes, we'll explore the geology, biology, and profound implications of Lake Vostok's buried secrets. Lake Vostok lies more than 400 meters below the ice surface and is kept liquid by the pressure of the overlying ice and geothermal heat from the Earth's crust. The lake spans some 15,690 square kilometers, with an average depth of 500 meters. Its weighty ice cap squeezes the water below just enough to prevent it from freezing solid. Yet the surface remains permanently dark and frigid, hovering around 3 degrees. For 15 million years, this lake has been cut off from the sun, atmosphere, and all surface ecosystems, forming an isolated biosphere in extreme conditions, crushing pressures exceeding 350 atmospheres, total darkness, and scarce nutrients. Beginning in the late 1980s, Russian Antarctic researchers drilled successive boreholes to explore the ice sheet and eventually reached a depth of 378 meters in 2012. To prevent contamination of this pristine environment, they used a specialized drilling fluid and sealed the borehole as soon as water rose to meet the drill column. When the fluid pressure exceeded the lake's water pressure, lake water surged up the borehole, allowing scientists to sample its contents without drilling directly into the lake itself. The breakthrough revealed a milky, slightly saline water column, an exciting sign that Lake Vostok wasn't a sterile abyss, but rather a potentially habitable habitat. Analysis of water samples has detected DNA signatures from a surprising array of microbial life. Environmental sequencing uncovered sequences belonging to bacteria and even single-celled eukaryotes, organisms with complex cellular structures. Some of these sequences resemble known psychrophiles, cold-loving microbes, while others are completely novel, with no close relatives in Earth's known tree of life. The lake's sediments too yielded hints of organisms adapted to metabolize hydrogen, methane, and sulfur compounds, chemistries reminiscent of deep-sea hydrothermal vent communities. These discoveries suggest Lake Vostok hosts a chemosynthetic ecosystem, deriving energy from chemical reactions rather than sunlight. Microbes may feed on minerals leached from the bedrock or oxidize hydrogen generated by water-rock interactions under high pressure. Unique enzymes, extremozymes, stabilized for function at high pressure and near freezing temperatures, likely enable these organisms to survive and reproduce. The prospect of extremozymes and novel metabolic pathways has captured the interest of biotechnology and pharmaceutical industries. Enzymes from cold-adapted microbes can catalyze reactions at low temperatures, saving energy and costs in industrial processes such as food processing, bioremediation, and fine chemical synthesis. Likewise, novel bioactive compounds, antibiotics, antifungals, or antiviral agents could emerge from Lake Vostok's microbial dark matter, offering new weapons against drug-resistant pathogens. Genomic exploration of Lake Vostok life may also illuminate fundamental principles of adaptation: how proteins fold and function under extreme pressure, how membranes remain fluid in sub-zero conditions, and how metabolic networks operate with minimal energy flux. Such knowledge could inform astrobiology, guiding the search for life in icy worlds like Europa or Enceladus, whose subsurface oceans may mirror Lake Vostok's environment. However, accessing Lake Vostok raises serious ecological and ethical questions. Introducing surface-borne microbes, even inadvertently via drilling fluids, could contaminate and irrevocably alter its native biome. Conversely, releasing ancient microbes into Earth's surface environment, accidentally or deliberately, poses uncertain risks. These organisms have evolved without exposure to modern ecosystems, raising concerns that they could outcompete native microbes or produce toxins unfamiliar to human immune systems. Researchers adhere to stringent planetary protection protocols borrowed from space exploration to prevent cross-contamination. Boreholes are sterilized and sampling equipment is rigorously decontaminated. Yet the inherent challenges of completely isolating a deep borehole mean that absolute sterility is virtually impossible. Balancing scientific discovery against the preservation of one of Earth's last pristine habitats remains a delicate act of responsibility. Lake Vostok is not only a living laboratory, but also a repository of paleoclimate records. Within the accreted ice layers that form the lake's roof, ancient climate signatures are preserved, trapped air bubbles, isotopic ratios, and dust particles. These archives extend the ice core record beyond 800,000 years, offering glimpses into earlier glacial-interglacial cycles and greenhouse climates. By drilling through the lake's accretion ice, scientists can extract data from epochs predating known ice cores, refining models of Earth's past climate and informing projections of future change. Likewise, understanding how Lake Vostok's ecosystem survives under prolonged isolation and extreme stress may offer insights into ecological resilience. How stable are its food webs? How do microbial communities adapt to nutrient scarcity and high pressure? The answers may prove relevant as climate change alters other isolated or extreme habitats, permafrost deep sea basins and polar cryosphere margins. Despite the breakthroughs, less than a litre of Lake Vostok water has been sampled to date, mere drops from a continent-sized reservoir. Future missions aim to deploy autonomous probes, melt probes that carry sterile sampling chambers, and remotely operated submersibles capable of video observation and targeted sampling of lake sediments, hydrothermal-like springs, and vent structures. International collaboration is vital as multiple Antarctic treaty parties hold stakes in preserving and exploring subglacial lakes ethically and transparently. As we resurface from Lake Vostok's buried depths, let your mind linger on that hidden world. A dark, frigid ocean isolated for millions of years, yet teeming with life's ingenuity. Consider how such an ecosystem could redefine our notions of habitability and extend the branches of Earth's tree of life, and reflect on our duty to explore responsibly, safeguarding pristine frontiers even as we unlock their secrets. Sleep now, carried by the knowledge that beneath miles of ice, life persists in defiance of extremes, reminding us of nature's enduring mystery and resilience. Descend into the serene sunlit waters of Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula, and you might first be struck by the crystal clarity of Cenote Angelita. But at approximately 30 meters below the surface lies a phenomenon so surreal it feels like crossing into another realm, an underwater river snaking through limestone caverns in a ghostly veil of hydrogen sulfide-charged water. Over the next 6 minutes, we'll explore how this submerged current forms, the dangers and wonders it presents to cave divers, and the eerie life, if any, that drifts along its murky banks. Cenotes are sinkholes formed when the limestone bedrock collapses, exposing groundwater beneath. Angelita, meaning little angel, appears tranquil at the surface, its circular pool fringed by jungle foliage, sunlight dancing on its clear fresh water. But below, fresh water gives way to a stratified system. Rainwater percolates through sealant soil, then dissolves limestone to form an aquifer of fresh water. Deeper still lies seawater that intruded when ancient sea levels were higher. Between these two is a thin, dense layer of hydrogen sulfide, produced by the bacterial decay of organic matter trapped between fresh and salt water. At about 30 meters down, divers encounter the halocline, a visible boundary where buoyant, oxygen-rich freshwater overlies denser, salty seawater. Here, hydrogen sulfide bubbles haze from the anoxic bottom layer, creating a cloud of milky turbidity. Into this haze plunges the river, a narrow channel carved by past currents or subtle density flows. The water here moves imperceptibly but inevitably, as denser water seeps along fissures and fractures in the limestone, flowing under gravity's pull through hidden corridors. Experienced cave divers describe entering this underwater river as stepping into Hades itself. The halocline sulfide mist swirls around fins and equipment, obscuring visibility. Light filters down but refracts at the boundary, casting ghostly shadows. Divers trace the riverbed, carefully following guideline reels through the gloom, Conrad's narration echoing. You feel the current tug at you, urging you onward into the darkness. The limestone walls rise like cathedral pillars, encrusted with mineral drips frozen in time. Along the banks, scattered branches and leaf litter from the forest above accumulate in the current's subtle flow, as if driftwood guided by an invisible hand. The formation of this subterranean river owes to Yucatan's unique geology. The porous limestone hosts an extensive network of caves and conduits. As fresh and salt waters converge, microbial communities metabolize organic matter, producing hydrogen sulfide gas, H2S. This gas saturates the denser bottom layer, imparting both acidity and toxicity. Over centuries, the slightly acidic water dissolves and redeposits minerals, subtly reshaping cavern walls. Meanwhile, pressure differences between water layers drive slow currents along gentle gradients. In effect, an underwater river that persists so long as the density contrast remains. Hydrogen sulfide is toxic to most animals and inhibits sunlight-driven photosynthesis, making these depths seemingly lifeless. Yet scientists have discovered specialized bacteria thriving at the halocline, oxidizing sulfide to fix carbon, analogous to hydrothermal vent communities deep beneath the ocean. These chemosynthetic microbes form slimy mats on submerged rock surfaces and fallen debris. Their presence may in turn support microscopic eukaryotes, protists and perhaps tiny crustaceans, creating a minimal but persistent food web. However, no large fauna, fish or crustaceans, has been documented in the river itself. The high sulfide concentration and low oxygen create a biological dead zone for most multicellular life. Diving Cenote Angelita demands technical skill. Passing through the halocline can coat masks and regulators in corrosive sulfide. Sudden visibility loss requires disciplined buoyancy control. The faint current must be respected. Guideline reels tether explorers to the open cavern. Many divers report an uncanny quiet, broken only by bubbles and heartbeat echoes. The surreal environment tests even seasoned cave divers who liken the journey to swimming through liquid fog beneath a stone ceiling. Local lore whispers that Cenote Angelita was once a Mayan sacred site, a gateway to the underworld, Xibalba, where gods and spirits dwelt. The submerged river seems to embody that myth, an aqueous flow between worlds. Modern explorers continue to map its branching tunnels, using sonar and rebreathers to penetrate deeper passages. Each expedition uncovers new alcoves, fallen stalactites and microbial mats festooned with subtle iridescence. Yet the source and full extent of the river remain unknown, tempting scientists and adventurers alike to push farther into the heart of this sunken labyrinth. Cenote Angelita's underwater river reminds us how geology, chemistry and biology intersect to sculpt astonishing environments. It embodies nature's capacity to produce isolated ecosystems, pockets of life clinging to energy sources far from sunlight. As climate change and human activity threaten surface and groundwater quality, understanding these fragile subterranean systems becomes critical. They serve as natural laboratories, where life has adapted to extremes and as windows into Earth's hidden hydrological past. On June 19, 2011, marine explorers with the Swedish OceanX diving team detected an astonishing shape on their side-scan sonar while searching for scrap metal in the Baltic Sea. Nestled 90 metres beneath the brackish waters lies a circular object roughly 60 metres in diameter, its flat tabletop surface rimmed by a sharp edge. Dubbed the Baltic Sea Anomaly, this feature resembles nothing so much as a crashed UFO. Over the next 6 minutes, we'll journey into this undersea enigma, its discovery, the baffling observations that defy conventional geology, the tantalizing artifacts recovered, and the theories, both plausible and fantastic, that seek to explain what really lies beneath the waves. The OceanX team, off-season after planning for Baltic wreck salvage, deployed an EdgeTech 2205 sonar unit to map the seabed. Amid old shipwrecks and fishing nets, one circular echo stood out, a perfectly symmetrical 60-metre disc surrounded by radial ridges, like spokes on a wheel. At first glance on the sonar display, it looked eerily artificial. Intrigued, the team returned in 2012 with underwater cameras and a remotely operated vehicle, ROV. Video footage revealed a smooth plateau with 90-degree angles, as well as a central pillar-like formation leading downward into the seafloor. The edges appeared too clean to be glacially scoured or biologically formed, sparking immediate speculation. Geologists typically expect submarine rock formations to develop through sediment deposition, volcanic extrusion, or glacial plucking. Yet the Baltic anomaly's symmetry, nearly a perfect circle c-meters across, and its sharply defined edges defy these processes. The surrounding seabed slopes gently to around 70 meters depth, then drops off at the anomaly's rim into a depression. Along the outer spoke ridges, divers observed furrows that run some 15 meters up the sides, like large-scale erosion faces or deliberately carved channels. None of these features correspond with known glacial striae or erosion patterns in the region. The anomaly's distinctly ordered geometry remains at odds with natural seabed topography. In 2013, divers returned with suction dredges and recovered several fragments from the anomaly's vicinity. At first glance, they appeared to be rusted metal shards. X-ray fluorescence analysis detected iron, oxygen, and silicon, common components of steel and concrete. One fragment resembled a bolt or fastener, albeit heavily corroded. Yet even these finds are inconclusive. Baltic shipping lanes have existed for centuries, and metal debris from wrecks, military exercises, or World War II-era icebreakers is common on the seafloor. The OceanX team concluded that while metal was present, it could just as easily have drifted down from historical wrecks or even recent trawl damage. No intact artifacts, no hull plates, no identifiable machinery have emerged to confirm a human-made origin. Among the most prosaic theories is that the anomaly is a glacial erratic, a boulder dropped by the retreating ice sheets at the end of the last ice age. The Baltic region was sculpted by continental glaciers 12,000 years ago, and numerous erratics pepper its landscape. But glacial boulders are typically angular and solitary, not encircled by concentric ridges or cylindrical basins. Proponents of a Soviet connection point to the Cold War history of covert Baltic sea testing. Could it be the remains of a clandestine submarine weapon test or an experimental sonar dome? Records from Soviet-era naval programs are murky, but infrastructure like underwater radar arrays or anti-submarine decoys might resemble a circular platform, if only one mythic fragment could verify that. Of course, the most sensational interpretation is that the Baltic anomaly represents extraterrestrial technology, an alien craft embedded in the seabed millennia ago. This theory gained traction online, fueled by the object's UFO-like appearance on sonar and the island of Gotland's folklore of Viking giants and sea demons. Some UFO enthusiasts point to the pillar rising from the centre as docking claw or structural support. Yet no propulsion ducts, hatchways, or other clear spacecraft features have been documented. Moreover, hard science demands reproducible evidence, metallurgy, isotopic signatures, or onboard electronics that bear non-terrestrial origins. Until such evidence surfaces, this theory remains in the realm of speculation. Despite public fascination, peer-reviewed marine geologists have largely steered clear of endorsing an artificial origin. Bathymetric surveys conducted by Swedish authorities revealed the feature under high-resolution multibeam sonar, confirming its shape but identifying it as a boulder surrounded by drop-offs caused by sediment streaming, a phenomenon known as turbidity currents. Dr. Anders Rönnberg of the Geological Survey of Sweden noted that similar circular features exist elsewhere on the Baltic shelf, albeit less pronounced. According to this view, the anomaly is simply an unusual but natural deposition of loose boulders and moraine. Proponents of the artificial theories counter that the sharp edges and radial features cannot arise from passive sediment movement, but no consensus has been reached. What makes the Baltic anomaly so compelling isn't just its geometry, it's our human fascination with secrets hidden in unfamiliar realms. The deep sea is Earth's final frontier, with over 80% of its floor unmapped at high resolution. For centuries, shipwrecks and lost cargo inspired truths woven with legends. Now, high-tech sonar reveals shapes that tease our imaginations. Could Lake Vostok's microbial life and Angelita's Sulphur River find analogies in other isolated aquatic systems? The Baltic anomaly reminds us that for every mapped wreck and for every surveyed reef, there exists a mystery awaiting the next dive. The OceanX team intends to return to the site with more advanced ROVs equipped with manipulator arms, high-definition cameras, and sampling tools designed to extract cores of sediment and rock. Better chemical and isotopic analysis could distinguish between anthropogenic alloys and naturally weathered minerals. Meanwhile, independent scientists continue side-scan surveys of adjacent areas to determine if similar anomalies cluster on the Baltic Shelf. International collaboration, standardized sampling protocols, and transparent publication of data will be key to resolving the anomaly's true nature, whether glacial remnant, Soviet relic, or something stranger. As we ascend from the Baltic anomaly's chilling depths back into daylight, carry with you the sense of wonder that drives ocean exploration. In the gloom of the deep, shapes take on new meanings, and our quest for answers propels us ever deeper, into cold waters beneath layers of ice, through labyrinthine caves and beyond the edge of the known. What lies waiting on that next sonar echo? Tonight, let the mystery of the Baltic anomaly drift in your dreams, a silent circle in the dark challenging us to seek, to question, and to discover. Drift with me now beneath the gentle swell of the Mediterranean off the coast of modern Alexandria, and you'll enter a sunken kingdom frozen in time. Here lie the drowned remnants of Cleopatra's palace, part of the fabled ancient city of Canopus and the royal quarter of Alexandria, submerged by earthquakes and storms in the 8th century AD. In this 6.5-minute exploration, we'll trace the discovery of colossal columns, statues, and sphinxes scattered across the seafloor. Consider the forces that claimed this once glorious metropolis, and imagine the secrets still buried beneath layers of sand and silt. Founded by Alexander the Great in 31 BC, Alexandria quickly became a beacon of Hellenistic culture. Its harbours bustled with grain ships bearing Egypt's lifeblood. The famed library glowed with scrolls, and palaces, some attributed by legend to Cleopatra herself, lined the shores. Centuries later, as prosperity waned, catastrophic earthquakes in 305 and 796 AD tilted the city's masonry, while tsunamis, triggered by seismic tremors, swallowed docks and quays, dragging whole blocks into the sea. With each storm, sand and silt smothered the ruins, preserving marble columns and statues in an underwater graveyard. In the 1960s, a commission led by French archaeologist Frank Godiot began surveying the eastern harbour. Side-scan sonar revealed outlines of submerged buildings and shattered columns lying in neat rows beneath shallow waves. By the 90s, trained divers had systematically mapped an underwater grid, uncovering entire facades of palaces once thought lost. Today, the submerged city of Herakleion Canopus project has revealed more than 150 statues, dozens of sphinxes, temple fragments, and massive porphyry columns, some weighing dozens of tons, all waiting silently in the blue. One of the most striking discoveries is a row of upright columns, each nearly 2 meters thick and standing on their original bases, as if holding up an invisible roof. Nearby, colossal statues of Ptolemaic rulers, wearing diadems and royal cloaks, languidly gaze from the seabed. Their faces are serene, lips curved in enigmatic smiles lost to time. Carved from locally quarried limestone and marble imported from quarries across the empire, these monuments attest to the wealth and craftsmanship of Egypt's last dynasty. Divers report a tactile awe as they swim alongside these megaliths, feeling the weight of centuries pressing down through the water. Between sculpted ruins lie thousands of amphorae, terracotta jars that once carried olive oil, wine, and grain to feed the city. Many remain wedged in their original positions along submerged quay walls, their pointed bases embedded in sand, necks braced against collapsed masonry. These shipwrecked warehouses give archaeologists a snapshot of daily commerce. Stamped handles reveal production centres from Rhodes to Cyprus, while organic residues hint at flavours savoured centuries ago. The amphorae fields lead divers along the outlines of ancient piers, their wooden beams long decayed but remembered by lines of amphorae, branching like roots. Perhaps most evocative are the sphinxes, mythical guardian carved in the likeness of pharaohs, with leonine bodies and regal human heads. Dozens of them lie half-buried, their paws stretched forward in eternal watchfulness. Some sphinxes bear inscriptions dedicating them to temples of Isis or Serapis, while others remain anonymous. their eroded features whispering lost names. As daylight filters through green-blue water, these sphinxes seem to stir, shadows dancing across their headdresses, as though still vigilant against unseen threats. Beyond palaces, divers encounter prostrate blocks from once grand temples, capitals carved with lotus motifs, relief panels depicting ritual processions, and stone lintels engraved with hieroglyphs. A temple of Amun-Ra emerges, its sanctuary outline traced by rows of column drums, while a shrine to Isis reveals curving niches that once held votive statues. Each fragment bears the hand of craftsmen who blended Egyptian religious iconography with Greek architectural forms, a testament to Alexandria's role as a crossroads of civilizations. For all we've glimpsed, far more remains hidden. How extensive was Cleopatra's own palace complex? Did secret chambers hold scrolls from the legendary library, now lost elsewhere but perhaps waiting here in silted recesses? Could maps or inscriptions lie entombed in sandy pockets, offering fresh insights into Ptolemaic court intrigues or religious rituals? Each dive peels back a layer of history, but also stirs new mysteries. Why did some structures resist collapse longer, and what microenvironments shielded delicate relief work from centuries of corrosion? The submerged ruins face modern threats. Trawling nets can scuff delicate stonework, pollution clouds the water, and rising sea temperatures alter encrusting marine life that, paradoxically, both harms and coats the monuments. UNESCO and the Egyptian government collaborate with international teams to designate protected marine archaeology zones, deploying underwater sampling programs and 3D photogrammetry to record structures before they vanish. Public exhibitions, both virtual and in museums, bring these wonders to light, reminding us that preserving the past sometimes means venturing beneath the waves. As you imagine gliding among these submerged megaliths, let your mind wander through the palace halls of a queen who bargained with Rome, through the bustling quays where merchants traded across the Mediterranean, and among priests who raised stone obelisks to honour their gods. The silence of the underwater city belies the human stories written in every carved block and amphora shard. Even now, deeper chambers and hidden corridors beckon, promising whispers of ancient power, devotion, and intrigue. Sleep now, cradled by the knowledge that lost civilizations persist beneath the sea, their stone columns and statues rising from the sand like guardians of a memory that refuses to fade. Imagine drifting just 5 meters beneath the crystalline waters off Greece's Laconian coast, sunlight dancing through gentle ripples to illuminate an ancient underwater city. Welcome to Pavla Petri, a submerged town whose labyrinth of streets, tombs, and house foundations has lain undisturbed for over 5,000 years. In this 6-minute journey, we'll explore Pavla Petri's remarkable preservation, the mysteries of its builders, the forces that claimed it, and the ongoing efforts to unlock its silent stories. Although local fishermen knew of scattered stones just beneath the surface, Pavla Petri's true nature was revealed in 1967 when British marine geologist Nicholas Fleming conducted side-scan sonar surveys. The sonar image showed a remarkably regular grid of rectangular blocks, streets and building foundations far too orderly to be natural. Divers confirmed the find, a sprawling settlement spanning nearly 9 hectares, complete with paved roads, courtyards, and tombs. At the time, Pavla Petri was immediately recognized as the oldest submerged city yet discovered, predating Atlantis' mythical age and rivaling contemporary Bronze Age sites on land. Pavla Petri flourished during the early Bronze Age, circa 3000 to 2000 BC. Its inhabitants built sturdy stone houses around narrow streets, organizing their community into distinct neighborhoods. At the western edge stands what may have been an administrative or religious center, marked by larger buildings and open plazas. To the east lie clustered residential quarters, while tombs border the city's perimeter, stone-lined graves containing pottery, tools, and human remains. The town's orientation suggests careful planning. Buildings aligned to prevailing winds, with streets sloping gently toward a central harbour that once welcomed trading vessels from Crete, Cyprus, and mainland Greece. How did Pavla Petri sink beneath the waves? 2 leading scenarios exist. One proposes gradual subsidence and sea level rise. Around 3000 BC, the eastern Mediterranean experienced slow increases in sea level, perhaps a metre per century, combined with tectonic tilting of the Peloponnese Peninsula. Over centuries, coastal communities retreated inland, but Pavla Petri's residents may have stubbornly stayed until waters lapped at their thresholds. The alternative invokes cataclysm, The region sits on the Hellenic Arc, where the African plate subducts beneath the Eurasian plate, creating seismic volatility. Archaeological surveys have unearthed collapsed walls and dislocated stones consistent with an earthquake. A single tremor could have jolted the city, triggering liquefaction of underlying sediments and abruptly dropping the ground by several meters, submerging the town and sealing it under silt almost overnight. Today, Pavlopetri's layout remains remarkably legible. Divers glide along sunken cobblestones, tracing straight roads that intersect at right angles, remarkably grid-like for a Bronze Age settlement. House foundations, some still bearing traces of mud brick walls, form rectangular compounds around central courtyards. Narrow channels between houses may have served as drainage or livestock runs. At dawn, shafts of light pierce the shallows, illuminating carved doorways and column bases, while schools of fish weave through collapsed lintels, imparting an otherworldly vitality to relics once frozen in ruin. Pavlopetri has yielded a treasure trove of artifacts: pottery fragments bearing painted decoration, obsidian blades from Milos, bronze tools, and personal ornaments. These finds attest to vibrant trade networks. Minoan Crite's influence is evident in ceramic styles, while Egyptian faience beads hint at long-distance connections. Analysis of tomb remains reveals dietary shifts over time. Stable isotope studies of human bones show diets rich in marine proteins alongside cereals and pulses cultivated inland. Together, these data reconstruct a community attuned to both land and sea, whose prosperity hinged on maritime commerce. Studying Pavlopetri presents unique hurdles. The site lies in shallow, often turbulent waters subject to seasonal storms that stir up silt, reducing visibility. Concrete markers once placed to map the city were removed by fishermen in past decades, erasing reference points. Modern efforts rely on cutting-edge photogrammetry. High-resolution cameras mounted on divers and ROVs capture overlapping images, later stitched into detailed 3D models. These digital reconstructions allow archaeologists to measure, monitor, and interpret structures without intrusive excavation, preserving Pavlopetri's fragile remains. Local and international teams collaborate under the Greek ephorate of underwater antiquities to protect Pavlopetri from looting, anchoring damage, and unauthorized diving. The town's designation as a protected marine archaeological zone prohibits trawling and limits diving to supervised research missions. Community outreach initiatives engage local fishermen, once inadvertent custodians of the site, in its stewardship, transforming them into guardians who report hazards and assist archaeologists. By melding traditional knowledge with scientific methods, Pavlopetri's legacy is secured for future generations. As you envision drifting above Pavlopetri's ghostly streets, consider the questions that linger. What stories did its people share over evening fires? How did they adapt when their world began to drift into the sea? Were temples to Poseidon or local deities submerged intact, their altars now encrusted with marine life? With each sonar mapping and photogrammetric survey, fragments of the past come alive, yet much remains hidden under meters of sediment. Beneath the silt may lie murals, inscriptions, even administrative tablets rinsed of clay but etched in memory. Pavlopetri stands as a poignant reminder of human vulnerability to Earth's ever-shifting crust and rising seas. Its preservation offers a time capsule into Bronze Age life, an underwater snapshot of architecture, commerce, and daily rhythms. As modern climate change raises contemporary sea levels, the sunken town also cautions present-day coastal communities. The line between land and sea is never fixed, and today's thriving ports may become tomorrow's submerged relics. Now, as our dive draws to a close, let the silent stones of Pavlopetri drift through your thoughts. Picture ancient footsteps echoing across marble thresholds, laughter and debate carried by Ionian breezes, and the jolt of earth that sent families scrambling as water rushed in. Sleep then beneath the watchful gaze of submerged columns, carried by the horror knowledge that our planet's shifting seas guard secrets both ancient and eternal. The stones hold their silence, but their story still speaks to those willing to listen.